middle over here, so that's absolutely no problem. All right, welcome, and thank you so much for joining our talk. Today we're talking about elevating coffee quality at your bar or in your restaurant. First of all, we're going to tell you who we are and why we're talking to you about coffee. Tristan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicole. My name is Tristan, working behind the bar and coffee stages most of my time in Australia too. Our competition, we're together, making a lot of that, and yeah, now we are here.
I think now you're working for Lavazza.
That's also right, yeah.
And that is a very big player on the international coffee market. So you might have a lot of information and insights about what is quality and what is quality on the big scale.
Exactly, yeah, that's right. Because you're working for a small roaster, I'm working for the big roaster. So that's really important to how can I find a good quality in this coffee for the big player or small player. That's why we are both together here.
And my name is Nicole. I live and work in Berlin. I am working in the specialty coffee sector for over 7 or 8 years now. And for those of you who don't know, but there is coffee competitions in the world of coffee, and I am one of those competitors, and I've started competing in coffee in 2016, and since then I've got a couple of trophies. So in 2016 I was the German Vice Barista Champion, 2018 I was the German Barista Champion, 2019 I was third, so I decided to do coffee in good spirits, which I won in Germany, and I'm still ranked number 5 in the world for this competition. And 2 weeks ago I won the German Brewers Cup, and I'm going to the world competition in 10 days. So I know that I do want to say that because I'm cocky, but I know that as a woman in coffee, people don't listen to me, and I want you to understand that whatever you want to ask me, I'm the right person. Please feel free, please trust me. I definitely have seen a lot and have traveled the world. I also worked in Australia, and we're really trying to tell you something that might change the way that you look at coffee in the future.
Whoa, don't forget I take a second place 2014 for Coffee and Good Spirits in Germany. That's also really... Okay. So now, exactly, we want to start.
Yeah, first of all, maybe you can do the second batch.
Yeah,
because we've got a couple of things for you to try. And maybe we can start the presentation with our first slide, exactly. So, I also am a qualified chef. So I used to work in Michelin star restaurants in Berlin, and that was a hard and tough time for me and a hard lesson to learn. And it really was such a valuable lesson to learn. But what I've always realized is we put so much effort and so much work in all of our recipes and what we serve the customer in like the best possible experience for the customer until it came to the point of coffee. Coffee was always seen as something cheap. We just buy it in 12 kilos. I don't know how long it will last us. But there's actually so much more to coffee. There's over 55 countries in the world that produce coffee. And on paper, there's over 2.5 million people living from this industry in the origin countries. And that is obviously just the number that's official. So we can imagine how many people are involved at origin so that we can drink coffee. The biggest country in the world that is exporting coffee, anyone knows? Louder? Brazil, exactly. This is very important for me to tell you this year especially because it has not been in the big media, but it is time that climate change really affects our industry as well, because it was the first year in forever that we had over 2 weeks of frost in Brazil, which results in over 45,000 tons of coffee being dead. This is going to be very remarkable for next year's coffee prices. And this is something that we should consider. We should consider, is it fair to stay in our mind space to buy cheap coffee? It is not, because it is a valuable and very, very rare good that involves a lot of work. And this is why I want to talk to you about terroir. We understand that wine, for example, needs very specific things in the earth to grow. I am such a big fan of German Riesling. It's just like so acidic, sparkly, fresh, like green apples. And if I would compare that to, let's say, a red wine, which obviously for us is a completely different thing from, let's say, Spain, where there's so much more sun and completely different earth. Every single person in this room understands we're talking about two different things, right? It's the same with coffee. So Africa has a completely different earth than, for example, South America and, for example, Asia. And if I know this, I can, before I drink my coffee, already choose what I feel like, what I want to drink, and then buy my coffee with like responsibility. So if we talk about Africa, Africa for me is the Riesling of coffees. It is incredible earth. So if you just picture Africa itself as like a photo that you see with an elephant and a giraffe, you will notice that there's always red earth. And red earth means there's a very high mineral content in the earth. So there's a lot of iron that comes to the surface, it oxidates, and then it gets red. This is a big, big hint for us that this ground is so rich in minerals that this will go into your coffee. It'll go into the plant itself. It'll strengthen this plant, and it'll make it more acidic, more sparkly, fine. It'll make it more floral. So African coffees are always very, very spritzy, fresh, more acidic, a little bit filigree and fine. If we go to South America, we have a completely different scenario, which is also super, super, super exciting, because we do have the Atlantic Ocean over here and the Pacific, and then all of those water masses, they meet over this continent, and it'll bring so much different influence, so we have more nutrients in our earth. This will do something with the coffee. It'll give it more body. It'll make it smoother. Coffees from Brazil are always, how do they taste?
Chocolate.
So much chocolate in Brazilian coffees, which is amazing. So now I already know, might be a chilly day, I feel like a little bit more balanced, round, full-bodied, chocolatey coffee. I'd probably choose something from Brazil.
Yeah, that's right. So I question Nicole because why have the blends in the coffee? Because of the different countries, right? Mm-hmm. You want more chocolate, take more coffee from Brazil, that's right? Or why it works with the blend with that?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can say that after our final slide from Origin, because we've covered Africa, which is one of the biggest coffee growing areas, and then South America, but there's another one that is the coffee that's mostly common for commodity coffee. Commodity coffee means coffee that you buy in the supermarket. And this is the Asian countries, and I think they're a little bit difficult for me, because there's so much monsoon rain that the plant is struggling to keep itself in the earth. So it needs to give all of its power to its roots. You will taste this. It'll taste woody or earthy, very harsh, very dark. But those countries produce much cheaper. So this is what we use mainly for commodity coffee. And then we go to the blends. Blends are an amazing tool to say, I have a really fresh, fruity coffee from Ethiopia, and I wanted to have a little bit more body, so I'll blend it, I'll mix it with a certain amount of Brazil coffee, or with Colombian coffee, or with Peruvian coffee. I get a very, very balanced coffee. But sometimes blends are used to push down the price. So they advertise, we're using Arabica coffee, or we're using high quality coffee. But they can't actually keep the price up because it would be too expensive. So what they do is they blend cheaper coffee in it. They roast everything super, super dark, so that you can't taste the difference anymore. And unfortunately, over 95% of the world's coffee are made like this. Specialty coffee is a section that's growing and it's really important, but we only make 5% of the market. And with everyone's help, we can change this. So now we've already seen that origin is such a big and important thing for coffee. So we understand, okay, different coffees, different origins have different tastes, have different flavors, and I can be more precise with what I want, especially if we want to make cocktails with this. And this brings me to the part where we want you to try this.
Of course. First of all, we are taking the brew with this cheaper coffee, but it's also bio and...
It's not super cheap. We
Yeah,
bought it
it's
at a,
not super cheap, but-
at a bio market. And
€8 for 500 grams. It's not really cheap, right? But it's fair trade, it's organic. So how can I find good quality with that? But first of all, when I see this package, I think, okay, it's organic, it's fair trade, fair enough, it's good quality inside, right? But it's not.
can we quickly have someone helping us to give... So we've prepared 2 coffees, yeah? One is this supermarket coffee that we're going to talk about now. Yeah. So these 2 are the specialty coffees. So maybe you can display it that way. Yeah. And display it that way. You will now get 2 plates of coffee, and one is ground a little bit coarser, and one is ground a little bit finer. And I want you to smell these coffees, or look at it, yeah? And you will immediately smell the difference between those coffees. So you've said you bought this at the bio market, and it says organic and fair trade,
Yeah.
which are usually quality signs,
Yeah.
right?
Of course, yeah. When you see this package, of course, I think, okay, there's quality inside. But you can find really that in your nose what is different right now, you know? And that's really important to find the right way to a good quality of coffee. First step, where you come to coffee. Second step, how is it in your nose, right? What's the smell? Yeah.
And what is fair trade? What does that mean?
Fair trade, it's good thing for the people there, making schools and something like that, but not for the coffee, right?
So fair trade actually is a company. So the company Fair Trade comes to you as a farmer and it says, hey, I've seen your harvest this year, you didn't sell everything, so you made minus, which is pretty bad for you. And the farmer's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. And this company comes to you and says, you know what we can do? We can give you a contract, a work contract. And in this work contract, we can promise you that even if your harvest is shit and you can't sell it, you get $1.20 per pound of coffee. There's not much, yeah? But for them, it's better than not having an income. So this contract means they have regular income.
Yeah.
The problem is that even if the harvest is better and they could earn more money than these $1.20, they can't because they're contracted. So they cannot earn more. So there's no intention for this farmer to invest in his farm. There's no intention to make better coffee. So actually, when we talk about quality, it is a down step. It means the quality will not be good, but it's a very, very fair social project. I think fair trade is amazing if we talk about social standards, but it is everything else but a quality sign.
Exactly. Also, when you have fair trade, 30%, you can sign it, it's fair trade. And you think it's 100%, but it's not. It's only about 30.
So this bag in particular, I love that you chose this because it is amazing to showcase. This says that is a coffee, it is fair trade and bio. Bio just means they are probably quite low from their altitude, so they need to use pesticides. Because if you're above a certain altitude, you don't really need to use pesticides, which is also not a good quality sign. So they chose to buy this organic label, which costs the farmer a lot of money, to then get certified. Yeah, kannst du schon eigentlich. And then it says it is pre-ground coffee. It is best before December next year. And then it says it's produced in Germany and packed in Germany. So we bought a product that said fair trade, and all we can do is racial profile where this coffee comes from by the little image they put on the package. We have no information about this coffee. We don't know the origin. Don't even know who we're supporting with our fair trade money. We don't know what kind of coffee is in there. Is it Arabica? Is it Robusta? What is in this package? We actually have no clue. This is why there are certain things you can really look at when you're buying coffee. Obviously, the brand that I'm working for is a good example. So we give information on our packaging. Let's say, okay, this is a filter coffee. This has tasting notes, so I already profiled it and wrote all of the tasting notes down. And then it's processed in a natural way. This is the variety, this is the altitude that it's grown in, and the harvest is from 2021. The best before date means nothing in coffee. because coffee doesn't really go bad. So there's certain infos that companies should always give you. And if these companies don't give it to you, they want to lie about their product, or they don't want to say it, which is not so good. And we're giving you the first cup that we're serving you right now is this coffee. So maybe don't drink it just yet. Maybe wait until we serve the second cup, so that you can understand what the difference is between paying $8.99 for half a kilo or $16.50 for half a kilo. I know it's a big difference, but you will taste it. And maybe I'll help. It does? All right. Do you have any questions so far? Would you like to know anything? There's 1,000 things that I can say about coffee, but sometimes it's really hard to just find.
Can I ask a question? Because very often they say that coffee is best before a certain date, or a few days after it's been roasted, or up to 3 weeks after it's been roasted. Does that affect flavor, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Coffee itself doesn't get moldy. And that's for normal people always a sign like, oh, yeah, it's not moldy, it can't go moldy, it must be good forever. But coffee has a perfect day. And we're going to talk about this in our last step of presentation. When we will talk about how we can preserve, like we have decided to buy good coffee. We have decided on a local roastery, on a good brand. We want to really keep this quality up for our customers. And I'll introduce you to a technique how you can do this. Any other questions?
How viable is that for a high volume place?
Say again?
How viable
The
is
small ones?
that? Yeah, no, like the process that you go through to keep it best if you sell like 3 kilos of coffee today.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, how can I do this for a big volume when I'm having like a big coffee shop, for example? The problem in hospitality is not really the big volume cafes, because you can buy a good grinder, you can buy a good coffee machine, you can dial it in. You usually get the tech support or the dial-in support from the roastery, and you're good. You decide on a good bean, you have a good grinder, you bang, 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 bang those coffees out. The big problem in high-end hospitality, in bars or in restaurants, is they don't do this. They serve 5 coffees per day. The restaurant I work for, like amazing restaurant, stars, 2 stars. They serve 9 coffees per night. 9. And that makes this coffee go so stale and so old. And it is so sad. And that's why for big volumes, absolutely go for the normal way that we do coffee, because there's a reason why we do coffee like this. But like small places, restaurants, where you can have small amounts, I'll introduce you to another thing. Din? Yeah. Okay, you had a question? No? Okay. Anything? Sorry. The service is slow.
With high quality.
Sorry, can you expand on the roast the coffee to be dark roast? But a lot of people.
Why do you dark roast?
You explain to us.
Mm-hmm. So the history of the dark roast is actually really funny. So around 1900, there were all of a sudden 3 Italian companies. They were very close to each other, and all of a sudden they had all the 3 the same idea. They all invented the espresso machine in the same year. So that was Pavoni, Gaccia, and Vittorio Arduino. They all came up with the same technology, which was a little steam engine. So they had a big boiler, they made water incredibly hot, and with the steam they had in this boiler, they could produce pressure. It was the first time ever that we had a tool in our hands to make coffee with pressure. And this resulted in the first espresso ever. But the water that we've used was so hot that it burned the coffee. But no one knew, because it was the first time ever they drank it. So as the technology got better, in the 60s especially, when Faema brought out the ES61, we had the tool to lower this temperature to 93 degrees, roundabout. And the coffee didn't taste burnt anymore. So everyone in Italy was like, what's going on? Why is my coffee not burned? That was always the taste. So people were like, oh, we need to roast darker. Because people are so used to this dark roast, this dark taste, that this is why people start roasting darker. The other thing was that the demand of coffee has been rising for years and years and years, and there's just not enough single origin quality to be sold, that blends were necessary, blends of lower quality coffee. So they bought Robusta from Vietnam, for example, that tastes completely different like the coffee in Brazil. And to level this out, you can roast everything super dark because you will not taste the difference anymore. If I have 2 slices of bread, one is a ciabatta and one is a focaccia. Clearly 2 different breads, but light. If I burn both of those slices of bread, both will taste like burnt bread. And this is what they've done with coffee. So this is why the second cup that you're drinking right now is high quality coffee, in my opinion. Where's the... and it is a lighter roast. So that you can emphasize on this coffee should taste a little bit like plum. It should have fruity qualities. It should give you a red color spectrum when you drink it. I hope that when you compare those coffees now, that you clearly taste, okay, these are 2 different things. Coffee can be so versatile and so different.
Of course, in the first one, you lose the body, right? It's feeling nothing in the mouth. After 2 seconds, that's it. With the second cup, you can feel the fruits, you can feel the taste more in your mouth. It's 3, 4, 5 seconds and coming more and more and more. And that's really important to also for our drinks to get it, right?
Exactly, that brings us to the part of coffee with spirits, because we both have experience with this. If you use a dark roast or a dark coffee or a heavy coffee, you'll only get one spectrum of flavor. You get bitter. And this usually, all the times, can overpower the other drinks, right? So this is why we, as competitors, would decide for a coffee like this, because it's fruity, it's sparkly, it's bright. I can have all of those flavors and I can build on those, I can work with those. To give you a couple of examples, we have a couple of different cocktail recipes over here. The first one, classic espresso martini. Willst du noch mal Wasser?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the classic espresso martini only has 3 ingredients, but if you make those 3 ingredients good, you will easily become the best bar in your town. So source a good coffee. I would go for a natural processed coffee. Natural processed means that the beans have dried in the cherry under the sun, and this way all of the fruit sugars from the fruit flesh can go into this bean and make it super sweet and round and just beautiful. Then I always like caramel vodka. This is the first time I've made this recipe, was in Australia in a bar, and I've worked with a local spirit and they had like the most amazing, really creamy caramel vodka, and I was like, oh, that's good. And this is why also in Australia I used the Mr. Black cold brew liqueur. I think by now this is quite a common brand, but please don't use or other not so nice. You can very, very, very easily make your own cold brew liqueur. You make a cold brew, you infuse it with rum, for example, or with vodka, add a little bit of sugar and spices. Amazing. Yeah? And those 3 simple ingredients are going to give you the best espresso martini. And then the next one is a cocktail that we're going to make for you now on stage, and it is an alcohol-free version as well. I have made this cocktail the first time 2 years ago for the Bar Convent, and then last year we went to a Christmas market. I know it wasn't many Christmas markets, but it was a small stand. And people loved it, and it is so easy to make, and this is why I want to show you this. So I'm a big fan of making cocktails as easy as possible, and that's why I'm using a batch brewer. Because every shop I know has a filter coffee machine at their bar. So our recipe is a slightly too high dose. So usually you would use on 450 milliliters, you would only use about 30 grams of coffee. But we're doubling it good. Because if you do cocktails with coffee, you need the strength and you need to work against the other counter elements. You've tasted the second coffee. It's light, it's floral, it's like tea. So we need to give it a little bit more of a boost. Yeah, this is looking good. So this is a very high dose and we're adding the water. And the other thing I made yesterday at home, super easy. I have made a cherry juice that is infused with tonka bean and vanilla and cinnamon and star anise seeds. I think that's the right word, yeah? And then I've let it just steep for half an hour and then it's done, it's finished. I can leave this juice for over a week in the fridge and won't go off. So for the next week, I'm fine with my coffee cocktail menu at work. Add a splash of rum if I want. And you're so easy to batch and to prepare in the bar if you're using batched brewed cocktails. Yep.
Cold infusion, right?
No.
Or hot?
Hot. Hot infused. Faster. And I'm lazy. So I got inspired to do batch brewed cocktails because I went to, I don't know if you know Martin Hudak. Yeah, he's the owner of Maybe Sammy, one of the best bars in the world at the moment, and he only opened 2 years ago. He's insane. He's amazing. He's so inspiring. Whenever you're in Sydney, just go there. It's incredible. But what he does is he has Irish coffees on batch. So when you want to go in, no matter what time, he will serve you an Irish coffee, and it's always so amazing and so good. It takes you less than 3 minutes. So you can also do Irish coffee with this, and we're just waiting on this. The batch brewer takes 3 to 5 minutes, so for a bar, absolutely doable. And until this is done, I'm going to ask you some more questions, or if you have any more questions. Maybe other recipe questions? Anything? Yeah, come on. Please.
I just want to go back to the first times when you talked about coffee in Taiwan, the different areas where they're produced. So we know that by 2050, almost 50 to 60% of land where we grow coffee will no longer be suitable for coffee. And as much as I love specialty coffee, it's a big part of my everyday, but I also understand that if I want to drink coffee the way I do today, and everybody's supposed to drink it the way they drink supermarket coffee, it'll be cheaper for me to buy the champagne from the 70s than a cup of coffee, if everyone is supposed to drink it. So how do you see the development of specialty coffee if we are to rely on such limited terroir?
By making this a little bit bigger. The problem is not us paying high prices for high quality. The problem are the big players, the 95%, that are going to Brazil and saying, oh, there was a fire, oh, we're reforesting, we're planting coffee. This is what a big industry did. They said, we are saving the Amazon by planting coffee trees. It is such a bad excuse for saying, we're just making a coffee farm there, to have more land, for do agriculture. This is so bad. So, if we would all start drinking better coffee, we would understand that we have to drink smaller amounts because it's expensive. Yeah? And this way, this is the key. If everyone would drink less but better, we would understand how valuable this thing is. All right. So the brew's nearly done. There's no water coming out anymore? And just so you know, this little batch brewing machine, I love it so much. Was Nicole? Has a little heating plate underneath, so you can keep your drinks. You can keep your drinks for your customers warm for a longer time. Right. Oh, I love this drink. It's so, so nice. you get this really warm feeling. You get this like tonka bean straight away, which is always a beautiful way to like incorporate this Christmassy flavor into your drinks. And when you're going to drink this, I think we can go to our final stop of this talk. So now we've talked about how important it is to buy quality. What is quality? What are origins? Why is it important to look at origins to see what coffee I want to serve? We've talked about how you can make cocktails with this, how you can elevate your cocktails just by choosing better beans and better ingredients. And now the final part is going to be, how can I actually manage this at a bar, and how can I calculate this prices? Because I am going to be honest to you, the coffee that I've used last week for the championship costs 160 euros per kilo. That is a lot, but it is worth it. I'm telling every single person of you, if you would come into my shop now, you would drink it, we'll sign it's worth it. This is one of the best coffees that I have ever drank. And a lot of people buy this coffee. Yeah?
Where's your shop?
I've got little carts at the front. It's at Torstraße in Mitte, Ackerstraße. Very good question. So there are coffees in the world that are so special and that are so good that it is worth spending that money. And I think this is where Michelin star restaurants should be really all ears. They should be like, oh my God, there's coffee like this. They're doing everything to have the best wine. They're doing everything to have the best ingredients. But coffee is so important. And this is why we have to explain how coffee ages.
So, how does it taste, guys? What is your feeling? What different with that? Is it different with the fruits, right? So that's why it's really important, because you understand the coffee, what is inside, right? It's a lot of nuts, it's chocolate. So what thinking, okay, what is chocolate for your spirits? What is the notes of my spirit? How can I move more chocolate? So that's why, think about your recipe or your spirits, think about recipe in your coffee, and then you make a really good cocktail, right? That's really important to find that. And Nicole, how it works with a freeze coffee? How can we do this in a bar? Is it easy or it's difficult?
It's super easy.
Okay, super easy.
So the problem that we have at first is we roast our coffee and it creates an environment of CO2 around it after roasting. So all of the molecules, they get really stressed during roasting, they don't know where they are. So they need a couple of days to relax afterwards. We call that de-gassing. So the little valves on your coffee bags, these ones, they're not for you to smell. They're actually so the bag doesn't explode because there's so much CO2 built up in those bags. After this resting phase, it's usually about 72 hours, our coffee develops. It goes from too fresh, maybe a little bit bubbly even in the tongue, maybe a little bit green, to its peaking point where it tastes amazing and the best. And after this peak, it goes down again because it ages and it just gets dry and it's just not as fresh anymore. So what I want is, I've bought a coffee for 160 euros, let's say it like that. And I want to keep it as fresh as possible. I've done a lot of experiments doing this because it's always such a waste to not use this coffee within its best time.
And the good thing here is also when you have the washed coffee, you have a natural coffee. You have right now here, you wait for after roasting 7, 12, 7, 15 days and then go to freezer, right?
Exactly. So every day, every coffee, depending on the processing, has a different aging time. To make this a little bit easier for end consumers, I've wrote a little booklet that explains why should we freeze coffee, what's the key points in doing it, and why is it good for us. So imagine you found out this perfect day to freeze your coffee, and you want to lock it in. You put it in, kannst du mir das mal kurz aufmachen? You put it either in little tubes like this. I know after Corona this sounds a little bit daunting, but those little tubes have a volume of exactly 22 grams. If you keep all of your recipes, no matter if for espresso or for filter at 20 grams, you can take one of those out of the freezer, chuck it right into the grinder, because if it is frozen, your grind size particle distribution is going to be so even that you dial it in once and it will not change. You don't have to redial your grinder all the time. It doesn't happen. You dial it in once, you need a single shot grinder for this, and then it's done. So everything I'm talking about now, forget the big hopper things. Forget the big ones, the grind-on-demand grinders, yeah? We're talking about single-dose grinders. Some maybe know an EK or even a hand grinder is possible, everything like this. What we have now put on the market are the little tubes that Tristan is going to give around, because they just look nicer, they're made of glass, you can still put them in the freezer, looks nice as a gift as well. It's not as testy as this one.
But it works well the same, right?
It works all the same. As soon as you freeze it, you're preserving this coffee's flavor and aroma and you're locking it in. After 2 months, when this coffee has been frozen, you can start counting the days. Every month in the freezer equals 1 day in real life. You can extend the living time of your coffee for 2 years. You buy coffee today, you can serve it in 1.5 years and it will taste nearly exactly the same. It just wasn't possible before. And it's so easy. So what you can do as a cafe, as a restaurant, I know this because I've worked in one of the cafes where they do it every single day. We have a freezer menu, and on this freezer menu you have the best coffees from 2019, 2020, 2021. And the customer can go through this menu and decide which coffee he wants. He tells me, I go to the freezer, I take a tube out. On this little tube it says exactly the grind size. I grind it, I make it, it's perfect. And it's perfect every single time. So this means we can now have high-end coffee, high-end quality coffee, and serve it at a normal restaurant, at a normal bar. People are actually able to have a coffee menu with different origins, to focus on, I want this origin, I want to buy a coffee from Panama. Panama coffee is so expensive.
Yeah. That's a point for going the next level, right? So how can you imagine that? And your customers say, okay, now we have the coffee from Africa. You see it here. It's a lot of fruit. Next step, you hand the coffee on the fridge. Then you go to the next step to brewing the coffee. And then together enjoying the flavors. The customer think, oh my God, what the hell is going on? Is it a menu here right now? Yes, it is. Because it's so much flavors inside for the coffee. Going step by step with an amazing time with other customers.
Exactly, because it is the last thing that you usually have. It's the last time you have with the customer. It's dessert and hopefully coffee. But you don't want to ruin everything by serving a shit coffee. You want to guide them through this experience as well. You want to stay on that table and say your first sip is going to be orange. Your second sip is going to be pineapple. And your third sip is going to be chocolate. There are coffees that work exactly like this. Exactly like this. Come at Röststedt and try it, seriously. It's amazing. And now we can answer everything. Yeah, I'm coming now. Please.
I made a quick calculation for 22 grams, 160 euro per kilogram for coffee. If you use one espresso for an espresso martini, with Mr. Black and vodka, that's from 6 to 7 euro cost per drink. Mm-hmm. Usually you would consider in the cocktail area to be around times 3. So it means that you will need to sell this drink for 22 euro. Is that something that you consider feasible?
I think there's a market for everything. Having worked in restaurants that charge incredible prices for their products. And I think it is a miscalculation that you don't want to give this to coffee. It's just people that do spend that money on wine. And there's people that do spend this money on other spirits. Why is coffee the exception? Why? Why shouldn't we pay this for coffee? And this is why I think it's something special. And this is why I think it's going to help the industry. Obviously, in a big cafe with 3 kilos, we can't just have frozen doses. That doesn't work. But to have this extra thing, to be like, our espresso is going to cost 6 euros. That's a fact. Because that is already the actual price at Hugo's in a restaurant for not such a good coffee. Their espresso is 6 euros. I'm like, how? Why? I don't understand. It's not a good coffee. So I think it is fair. I think if you serve people better quality, they will understand, and they will then, they're going out. They want to treat themselves. They want to have this experience. They're sitting already at your cafe. They're obviously willing to pay money. So if you just go this extra step and give them better quality, they'll just go out every single day at work. They go out and they're like, Nicole, that was so amazing. It's just like, it's such an experience. You're giving more than just a drink.
And also, we say, you know, we tasted first of all the coffee for 8 euros, right? It was not good. And then have a coffee here was 15, 14?
16.
16 euros, and there's a much more taste inside. For the first step, go step by step. Not buying the coffee for 1,000 euros because it needs time to understand this coffee. So getting small steps. Buying coffee for the good quality, slow roast, single origin, and then you have more taste with that. And then, of course, your price is also good. But the people have to understand why the taste of coffee is there. Going step with that. Not buying this coffee, going step with better quality. And then mix it with spirits or something like that, with alcohol, with no alcohol. And you have for customers a lot of experience.
How do you feel about like one single serve type of method like AeroPress? Do you know what that is? Yeah.
I think AeroPress is a valid thing. I wouldn't do it in a cafe or in a restaurant because it's a travel press, and it's always like it always
But if
looks
you
a
want
little
to do
bit.
it in the moment for a cocktail, let's say, wouldn't it make it more fresh instead of just batching?
The benefit with AeroPress is that it's very fast. And the other benefit is it doesn't take enough space away. And because you're applying pressure, you get a more silky mouthfeel. You can overdose very easily. You get an extraction, like a little bit shorter one. There's so many recipes for AeroPress. I've used AeroPress in my competitions. It just for this high-end feeling doesn't look very high-end.
Yeah.
So I would always prefer like a filter option or an espresso.
Yeah.
Because it just looks nicer for the customer. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'm a bit daft, but for a cocktail bar setting, how would you implement your freezing for the menu? Because I do this at home already with my coffee. I buy a big batch and then I freeze it because I don't drink 5 liters of coffee a day. But how would you do this for a bar?
I can tell you because I've worked in one. So what we had was a freezer drawer just for the frozen coffees, and they were all catalogued. So they all had little numbers on them. So on the menu it said, you can have this coffee number 56, for example. Then they order a cocktail with this coffee, or a cocktail that's specifically made just with this coffee. You go to your freezer door, you open it, you chuck it in your single dose grinder, EK preferably. You make it as an espresso or as a filter, whatever, and then you just follow your normal recipe. It actually is not the only thing that's different than a normal coffee cocktail setup is that you go to the freezer and single grind it. That's the only thing.
I want to ask both your opinion about the future of these big companies that use dark roast coffee. It's like I would like to, like you give me your opinion and where you see it's gonna be 10 years. What do you think is gonna work?
It's done?
Nicole?
What do you think? The future of the big players.
The future of big players is, that's why I'm staying here. That's why we're talking about next step. we want to go to more quality coffee, not like the big ones, because we don't can do this. We still a lot of people want drinking coffee to this price, but a little part of that we're thinking for a next step, and that's why we're doing that in Turin to making slow roast, making better quality, pay more for the coffee in Brazil and Africa.
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
going step by step, because when you want this coffee, because man, I don't want this coffee for 8 euros or 10 euros because I don't know where it's come from. I want really a lot of thing and taste of that. Can you give me that? Of course I can. And a lot of people making this way, the big players making this way too.
So that was actually really interesting because we just had this chat before. So I said, so what is Lavazza? What kind of coffee do they do, quality-wise? And you just told me all the things they do for sustainability, because they're seeing that it works with the smaller companies. They see this is trendy now, so they're being like, oh, we need to be trendy as well. So what are they actually doing in the moment? They're doing so many things at farm level.
We make at farm level, of course, making better quality in the farms, because for washing process, for natural process, how can a better taste of the coffee of that, give me money for that, for better machines, because we have better coffee in this market. Of course, the camera will say, okay, I want this coffee from Lavazza, right? That's right, step by step, because the people want to have this small steps well, right? My grandmother had a coffee, bring the coffee from Brazil, and a lot of fruits inside and a lot of nuts, and for me, fantastic. My grandmother take a sip. Fucking hell, what is that? It's not my coffee, because 20 years drinking this coffee, and that's the taste what my grandmother have. That's quality. But now we have to step by step to know what is inside for the coffee, to understand it's good quality or not. That's why we're doing that.
And I think especially the big companies are realizing they're running out of space. So they need to invest in better, more sustainable options to farm. So I think even the bigger companies are going to hopefully be a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah, tell the questions to big companies where the coffee come from, where the farmers, what is inside, what kind of blend is it. When a company can say to you, yeah, it's that, it's from Africa, it's this blend, what is this roast process, okay, cool. He knows what you're doing. When the roasts are not saying nothing, just, oh yeah, it's good quality coffee, it's a lot of chocolate, and that's it. Yeah, and it's not a good way. All right.
Questions? Anything else?
I happen to work in a bar that doesn't have a coffee machine at all. What options would I have to make coffee cocktails, put them on the menu, without the expense of buying an actual fully automated or fully functional machine?
I've got an answer. Do you? Cold brew is the key. Yeah, cold brew you can make in a bucket. It doesn't matter. And then you filter it, and it'll last, and you just have to refrigerate it. Cold brew is the magic ingredients for bartenders to use coffee really, really easy and really good. Otherwise, a filter machine like this, that one only costs 300 euros, I think.
Yeah, 300.
And you'll have it for the rest of your life.
Good grinder too, and that's it. It's not really big money.
And you can take it on, I don't know, conventions, and you can bring it home. Right.
Well, what I understand now, because I'm not in the bartending industry, I'm a producer of food spirits. What you are saying that the coffee until now is a commodity, right? Which is sold in the. Okay.
Specialty coffee is only 5% cheaper.
Okay. And now we are talking about that specialty coffee should get more pushed into the market because it's more quality, because it's the real coffee, right? That's how I understand it, more or less. And my question is, if you do the cocktails, is this only well done with the specialty coffee, or is it also with the ordinary coffee?
It's really easy because you can just elevate the quality of your cocktails so much. Like if I've seen a lot of competitors that use quite dark roasted coffee or quite heavy spirits, they just don't get this. It's the same as imagine a cocktail competition and someone comes with like the harshest alcohol and tries to make a floral and nice drink out of it. It's not going to work. It'll always have this harshness. It'll always be so heavy and you'll be like, it tastes almost like too much of alcohol. And it's the same with coffee. You can use a higher quality coffee and you can elevate your drinks.
Okay.
I think that's it.
That's it, yeah?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
for
everybody.
listening. That was amazing.
Thank you, Nicole. So, see you there on the bar for good coffee, right?